Hello, parents, students. Thank you for joining our webinar for tonight. Tonight's topic is planning your campus visits. And as many of us knows, seeing is believing. So it is important for us to visit the campus and see the real thing before committing our children to study at boarding schools. So I'm your host tonight. I'm Daniel Cito. For those families who have um, not known me, I have been working in the field for over 20 odd years. I'm an education consultant based out of Hong Kong, but recently, few years, relocated over to Singapore. So I'm now in the works of helping spreading boarding education, especially American boarding education, for here to Southeast Asia. Now, tonight's outline, there are a number of slides that we are sharing, and we'll get right to it. So as I mentioned, seeing is believing. Just like we do not plan to buy an apartment without having taken a look at the apartment, our child's future is a lot more precious than an investment. So do not enroll our child in a school that we have not seen. Now, therefore, we need to start looking into the visits. There are, in general, three types of visits. One, we just visit the campus, the school, right? Visit only, what we call. The second one is a little bit more complicated, is visit plus interviews, right? And this is especially important when we are in the process of applying to boarding schools. So as part of the process, and I'll explain a little bit later, that interviews are a mandatory part of the application process, and a lot of families would choose to conduct their interviews on campus. So that will become part of the campus visit. And last, revisit days. After a child has been accepted, has been offered a place in a school, then the family has the option of choosing to spend one full day in revisiting the school in late March or early April. So there are three different types of visits. Now, we mentioned about interviews. So interviews, there are also three types. So we have on-campus interviews, we have hotel interviews, and we have online interviews. And the most effective interviews are usually the ones that are conducted on campus, right? So on-campus interviews are the most popular ones, and also in general, most preferred by the schools, because they also get a chance to meet with the students and the parents in person. All right. Now, occasionally, for logistics reason or different reasons, some families might not be able to visit the campus and conduct the interviews on campus. Then, during the times when the school officers would visit the country or would visit the city, say Singapore or Jakarta or Bangkok, then if the school officer would have enough time available, then they would also opening up part of their calendar to having interviews right there at the hotel. And of course, there is the especially popular since COVID, there is the online interviews. Now, when do we do our visit? So let's talk about the easy ones. So for the visit plus interview, the most obvious time would be during the interview period, which would be from October to January of the application year. Now, the tips here would be to go only when the student is most ready. So usually you want to go towards the later part, like January or maybe December, but not too late though. Some of the schools, they might not open up to on-campus visits and interviews during January, and sometimes to specific segments of the applicant pool. So sometimes, for some students applying from China, for example, they might be asked to finish all the interviews on if it is on campus on or before the end of December. The schools might want to choose to reserve January more so to domestic families or families from other parts of the world outside of China. Now, there for the visits only campus visits, then it will be all the other times would be open for the families to go visit. So all the other times then October to January. But if you think about all the other times that are actually available, open to visit, then actually it's not that much time. So it ended up mostly being summertime. For February is usually closed because the entire admission office people will be gathering and discussing the applicants' pool and their credentials. And so usually February, there'll be no time hosting any visits. March is always busy, and also there's the spring break. And then there's the preparation for the revisit days. So therefore, ended up really is about between mid-April to mid-May for senior boarding schools. That would be the only time that you can go visit the schools while the school is in session. Now, but this is also can be tricky because mid-April to mid-May, there are not that many public holidays around in Asia. So therefore, the students out here might not be able to take advantage of that 1 month window. So therefore, ended up most of the campus visits will take place during the summertime. Now, when we're talking about campus visit and looking into, first of all, we need to look into the purpose. And it's not just taking a look at a school, right? So exactly what do we want to accomplish at the end of the visit? So we've got to begin with the end in mind. So if we have to like boil it down to the essence, the purpose of campus visits is really to identify the fits. Identify the fit meaning to assess how the school environment aligns with our child's developmental needs, with a focus on strengthening our child's confidence. So again, it's really about taking a look at the environment and understanding how this school environment can help with our child's developing their self-confidence. So that is the core question. That is the $1 million question. Now, let's go back to the basis about what are the core elements of the school. The schools are made up of facilities, curriculum, faculty, and students, with students being the most important element. Our children learn the most, of course, they learn from the curriculum, through the faculty, but most importantly, they learn from each other. So the peers are most important in a school. Now, if we look at the macro factors influencing culture, right, then we'll be looking into boils down to three most decisive factors, which are student population, boarding ratio, and the setting. Now, for student population, that is actually the single most determining factor influencing a school's culture. And one might ask why, right? Because it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal, right? Just the population size. But actually, no, it for a boarding school, it makes a whole lot of difference. If you take a look at some of the larger schools, such as Andover or Exeter, they are more than 1,000 people strong. And that type of boarding environment, living with 1,000 peers, um, it requires certain dose of independence on the side of the student. Um, it's 1,000 people. You might not know each other, right? Research has been conducted to identify the sweet spot is somewhere around 400. Like there's a invisible ceiling of environment or population size of up to 400 students. Then within that, everybody knows each other's name. But once you exceed 400, might be some students that we might not be able to recall their names or in terms of having closer dialogues. So therefore, that is why many schools, boarding schools, will hover around 400 student um, population size. Now, I mentioned about the population size influencing culture. I'll just give some further examples. For a school size that is very large, it requires um, first of all independence on the student because the school would not be able to really having a very close supervision on every student, right? So students are expected to be able to be self-sufficient to some sense. Big schools, their advantage is resources. They have so many resources that are available. Well, but it's just like a big restaurant with a buffet lunch, right? And there are many, many dishes lying around. So it's wonderful. But you got to have, it does rely upon the guests to be able to reach out and take the food in order to fill your appetite. Same thing. Big schools have a lot of offerings, really wonderful offerings, but it does require the students to be very self-motivated, self-independent, very resourceful, so that they will be able to take advantage of all these resources. So um, that's one side of the culture. Now, there are on the other side of the spectrum, much smaller population size of 400, 300. Then the schools become a lot more cozier. All right. Everybody knows each other. And also, in a small size school, the type of activities they need to churn out, like drama production, theater production, like dance, like choir, and all that, like doing a football team or whatever. I mean, you still need to have all the basic elements of a bigger school. So therefore, in a smaller school, everybody gets to contribute. Not just gets to contribute, everybody is expected to contribute. So therefore, you might not be an expert in drama, in acting, but you might be requested, you might be encouraged to participate in the drama performance. You might not be able to do so as easily in a much bigger school. In a school of 800, in a school of 1,000, I'm sure they have a lot of students that are excellent in every activity, in every interest. And so, therefore, a lot of times in these much bigger schools, ended up it will be the A plus students, A plus in that particular activity, that will end up being able to really participate. Now, versus in a much smaller population size, a school with a much smaller population size, um, the culture of the school will be a lot more encouraging for students. No worries, you might not be great, you might not be A plus, you might not have done this before. No worries, keep coming. We need people, we need support. So tends to be usually schools with much smaller population size. They are a lot more encouraging. They are a lot more supportive. After all, they get to know each other a lot more, a lot better. It feels a little bit more like a home rather than a town. So therefore, uh, depends on what the child's needs. Every child's needs is different. Some would, uh, some can grow a lot better under a very nurturing culture, or some might feel that I'm already beyond that. I need resources. I know what I want to do. I just need to have the resources to have the faculty to help me achieve my ambition. Now, in a standard campus visit, as the itinerary would go, first you'll drive, your car. You look for the parking lot, usually the admissions parking lot. That will be the first place you enter. You get off the car, then you look for the admission office. You open the door. There will be the reception area. You go to the reception desk, speak to the lady or the man, the gentleman over there, and register your name. You say, "Okay, I'm so and so. We have made the appointment for 9 a.m. today, for campus visits," and then they will likely seat you in the waiting room. And then after 5 minutes or so, then the tour guide would show up, right? And then the tour would take place. The tour usually would take place for about 50 minutes, 45, 50 minutes. Some can be as long as an hour, but usually around that time. And afterwards, then the tour guide will bring the family back to exactly the same place, back to the waiting room. All right. And then where the student would engage into the interviews. The student will have the interviews. Now, if you only do the campus visit only, then this is it. Sometimes the admission officer will come out and greet the family and have even a chat, even a long chat, and then before saying goodbye. But in a typical campus interview tour, whereby there's a component of the visit plus also the interviews, then after the tour is done, the family comes back to the waiting room. Then the student would begin the interview for about half an hour. After half an hour, the student would come out and the parents would go in, right? And maybe for another 10, 15 minutes. And after all the Q&A is done, then the parents would also come out, rejoin the student, and then there they would say goodbye to the interviewer. And then they would exit back to the parking lot and leave the school. So this is how a standard campus visit itinerary would be done. From beginning to end, if you include all the elements, it would be somewhere around an hour and 45 minutes. No, if you want to be play safe, 2 hours. That would that would be safe enough. During the tour, what do we observe? What to observe, right? There's so many things that we can observe, right? A lot of families they would focus a lot more on, how new is the other buildings, and you know, to some extent how luxurious they would be, right? Especially when they go into the waiting room, right? Wow, uh, how 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 impressive is the interior decoration, etc. But in a boarding school, I would always counsel my families. It's always about people because it's a boarding school. It's about people. And so therefore, when we are at the tour, the first and foremost is to observe the people there. So it's people, people, people. So the first is to observe the tour guide. And through talking with the tour guide and through the interaction, observe the maturity. The tour guide usually have been at the school for a few years. Occasionally, you do run into some first year students taking on tour guide, but more often than not, it will be students who have been at the school for 3 years or so, and just now last year they are now seniors. They are applying for college, and they are now doing the tours to give incoming families or prospective families a, a an overall feel about what the school environment is like and what it can do for its students. So talk to the tour guide and observe how mature that the tour guide is. How as because the tour guide usually has been there for a few years, they will know a lot about the school. So get to learn more about the tour guide. All right, personality, and do not be shy to ask questions such as what have you how have you been different over your last 3 years at that school? How has this school helped you grow over the last 3 years? How are you different from the same you 3 or 4 years ago? And then through these type of questions, or what we call reflective questions, we'll be able to learn from the tour guide how that process, how that growth journey has been for that particular tour guide. We want to understand that process because we want to um, overlap that process onto our child's own potential experience here in this school. When we are going through the tour, we always want to imagine if my child were to enroll in this school, were to study here for his next 3, 4 years, what would it be like for my child? How would my child grow in this environment? That is always the key question. So from that context, we all also want to observe the interactions among student bodies. So when two guys bring us around the school, we'll see many students. Now, this will not be the case during summertime. Summer is unfortunately the time of that year where the regular school year students and faculty are not present on campus. We only get to see the buildings, the facilities. All right. We can learn about the curriculum, but we don't get to meet the teachers. We don't get to meet the students. So, but if we do go between, let's say, mid-April to mid-May, that magic window over that 1 year, that in that period for visits only, and or if we are doing interview tour, between October and January, we'll get to see students, and we want to see how students they relate to each other. Are they happy? What do they talk about? Sometimes, if we do get into having a luncheon on campus, sometimes it happens to be around lunchtime, and the school might offer the family a quick lunch. And during that uh, brief period, we might actually be able to witness how students, talk to one another, what they talk about during a regular lunch hour. So we want to observe as much as possible how students interact with one another and their behavior. We also want to understand about the interactions between teachers and students. And usually that will be in the classroom, right? We want to see how passionate the teachers are in the subjects while they're teaching, and what sort of interaction the faculty has with the students inside the classrooms. And sometimes you also get to see that outside the classroom, especially during the period in between classes. During those 5, 10 minutes, teachers would come out and students would come out. They all crisscross, and you get to see the interaction. Are they friendly? Do they kind of treat each other like family members, or pretty aloof, like more business-like, right? So there are different schools, different cultures, and all this would give us an indication of what that environment would be for our child over the next 3, 4 years. Last but not least will be the interactions between the admissions office and the family. All right. So, all the interaction between ourselves and the admissions office before the tour, I mean, while arranging for the tour, and all the way to all the follow-up after the tour. All that interactions, you know, how is that chemistry? Was it warm? Was it approachable? Uh, was it more like business-like, or was it more like you should feel lucky that if you can study here, that sort of thing? So again, different schools they have different cultures and vibes. So this is what we want to make out of during visiting a school. After the tour, these are some of the questions that we may want to reflect upon. What are the school's culture and vibe? Right? As I mentioned just now, all a school's culture is not made of buildings. The school's culture is made of people collectively. So therefore, the more data points that we can draw from our observations of the people, the more accurate it will be for us to be able to deduce what the school's culture is and how it would gel or not gel with our child. Right. If my child were to live here for his high school years, in what ways would this environment help him grow? So the question is not about this is a good school or this is not a good school. Every school is good, all right? It's just good in what ways? And more so, it's not about good or bad. It's actually how helpful will this school be to the growth of my child? All right. So it's about in what ways would this school help my child? Now, no school can tick all the boxes. So there's no perfect school. Every school has their own niche, all right? And every school has their unique ways of helping our child grow. But no school can tick all the boxes with respect to the needs of our child. So therefore, as parents, we are looking for the best match between the school and my child, where does it fit the most? This is what we're looking at. So it's not, again, not looking at good school or not good school or school with higher ranking, lower ranking, and all that. It's really about looking at the best fit. And some of the guidelines would be, where would my child feel at home and happy? Now, a lot of times, if you talk to the tour guys a lot, and you would ask them, what makes you choose this school? They would say, "Oh, because I just fell in love with the school. I just felt so at home. I just feel so happy here. Everyone here is just so warm and approachable." And almost every tour guide would say almost similar things about that school, right? But I mean, the schools are obviously quite different. So it's really about a child feeling very at home, that particular child feeling very much at home in that particular school. So there's this chemistry between a child's personality and the school culture. And when the two matches, the child will feel very much at home. And if they feel very much at home, they're at ease. They're more inclined to be happy because they just feel very compatible, right? So therefore, being accepted would give a child a sense of security. And when a child feels secure, that child usually feels more encouraged to try new things. They would have the courage to try new things. And it is through trying new things that we learn. Now, sometimes we fail, and actually, many times we would fail. Not all new things we get it right the first time. But given the right type of compatibility, there will be enough of a mutual support structure that would help our child to get back on his feet again. And then our child will have the courage to try again. And thus becomes a virtuous cycle. And practice makes perfect. If you try enough again, you get it. And after you become successful at something, gradually confidence is being built up. So this is how that kind of a um, virtuous circle is being developed. And when the child is being confident, they become even more secure and they have more courage to try new things. And so it becomes better and better and better. And so I've always encouraged a family, uh, don't just choose to enroll your child in a school because of some ranking on the internet, or maybe just go and just based on some websites that you see. That can be very dangerous. You want to look for an environment where your child feels at home, and you won't know just by watching some videos, Instagram videos, or some YouTube videos on your phone. You have to be there to feel the culture, to feel the vibe. So that would be my recommendation of to every family. Go visit the school. Do not enroll your child to anywhere unless you have vetted the place yourself. And ideally, together with your child so that the whole family gets to vet the school yourself. And that is what I've prepared for this evening. I just want to mention also, in addition to visiting the schools on campus, which is very important, there are also other opportunities to bring ourselves in direct contact with the school. And one of the opportunities is via school fairs. Here at Sesameed, we do run American boarding school fairs every autumn. And this fall, we'll be having five fairs in Singapore, Jakarta, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, and Dubai. And we welcome families all around Southeast Asia and all the way to the Middle East to come to any of these fairs in the region on those days in late October all the way through early November. Many boarding schools are here and together with the school officers, some are dean of enrollment, directors of admissions. So they are representative enough to be able to share their school with the families directly in person. It also, many schools have alumni working in these cities, or maybe they have current parents with children studying at the school. And so you also get meet with current families and alumni as well to hear their personal stories and their personal experiences. So all in all, we welcome our families to come and join um, these American boarding schools at the upcoming fairs. And please kindly spread the word around so that more and more of the families in the community are aware of these fairs, and they can all bring their families to come on these days. And together, we all learn and celebrate boarding education together.